Hi, welcome to the Sage's Cabin podcast. I'm your host, Rox Madeira. So grab a cup of tea and come and join me in the Sage's Cabin as we chat about everything from herbal gardening, herbal medicine, movement practices, wild food, postnatal and just general well-being. So I haven't actually podcasted for a while, and as you might have noticed, we've changed the name of the podcast to the Sage's Cabin. So at the moment I've been busy organising the Scottish Wild Food Festival, which is happening in September the 18th and the 19th. And so the next few podcasts that I'm going to be doing are going to be with facilitators and workshop providers and stall holders that are coming to the festival. So it'll give you a little bit of a flavour of what's happening at the Wild Food Festival and who's going to be there. Lots of artisan products and lots of really interesting people who are doing a lot of things with wild food and herbal medicine. So I hope you enjoy the next podcasts. This one is going to be with Charlotte Flowers from Charlotte Flower Chocolates. Hi Charlotte, how are you?
Hi, very well, how are you?
I'm good. We're really excited to have you joining us for the Wild Food Festival in September. So we just want to have a wee chat to talk about you. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your business values, and how you got into making chocolates.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to the festival as well. So and really glad it's happening this year after everything we've been through. So my chocolate making business, I have been making chocolates now for 12, 13 years. And I started out making chocolates with the intention of exploring using wild flavours with chocolate. So I didn't start out as a chocolate making business and then switch to wild flavours. My inspiration was to try and capture wild flavours in chocolate. And I've always been a bit of a forager, and I've always loved chocolate. But it was the sort of coming together, really, of the two things at a time in my life when I needed to find work. I'm in a rural area. Finding a new job would have meant commuting an hour each way every day, which I didn't want to do. Teenage kids, blah, 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 whole thing. So it was, could I start something from home? And chocolate is really low investment. You don't need a huge amount of expensive kit to make chocolate. So you just need to learn skills and proceed from there. So it was easy enough to do it I started in my kitchen and then very quickly grew out of that. And moved couldn't find premises locally. That's a real problem. There was just nothing that I could rent or that was a suitable premises or in a suitable place. So we converted a room in the house. So I was very fortunate to have that space to be able to make a workshop in house. And I'm still working in that space. I'm speaking to you from it now. The space is cramped, and I have somebody working with me a couple of days a week, and we have to sort of dance around each other, and we sort of know we've worked with each other enough over the last 4 or 5 years to know exactly where the other one's going to be. So we just do move around, and it is a bit of a dance, but it's the rest of the house is full of packaging. So there's packaging in cupboards, there's packaging behind sofas, there's packaging at the top of the stairs. Packaging is just there's so much packaging. You have to buy everything in bulk. So there's boxes of packaging everywhere.
So what was it that actually drew you to chocolate? And can you just talk to me about chocolate and like how it's made and how you would identify some good chocolate?
Yeah. Okay. Well, chocolate is fascinating. And it's an extraordinary foodstuff, and it starts its life in the humid tropics. It's a beautiful tree. It's about the size of a, like a good-sized apple tree. It's an extraordinary tree. Then the fruits grow on the stem, and it's very productive. It works under shade, so it likes shade. So it's a great tree that farmers can grow under the forest canopy, which ecologically is great. And so it's able to provide farmers in the humid tropics with a cash crop. So it has a really important economic role, but it's ecologically not, doesn't destroy forests. It doesn't need to destroy. Obviously, some people do destroy forests, and we don't want to encourage that. But actually, the thing that really excites me is that it prefers to grow in shade. So it will grow better if it's part of a forest system. And I find that really exciting. So there's all sorts of stuff about it. And I used to work in forestry, and have worked in the humid tropics, and have worked, in villages where cocoa was a really important crop. So I've sort of known cocoa in that way. And then as a consumer, and then, as I said, about 12, 13 years ago, I needed to find something to do and develop a small business from home. And chocolate seemed, I don't know why chocolate came to me, but it did. And it was really
alluring,
interesting.
isn't it?
It's very alluring, yes, it's delicious. And, as you soon learn, it's quite easy to pick up the skills, just practice and whatever. But it's, as I said, it doesn't require huge investment. But also, even your rejects aren't really rejects. You have to do an awful lot to make chocolate unpalatable. So you can there's quite low on waste. It's not like I'm burning cakes or making jam that is or distilling something that's undrinkable. There's always, somebody will always eat your chocolate, and so it's very forgiving in that way, and it's fun to work with, because you can do so much with it. It's the most extraordinary food, and it's really complex. It's got incredible layers of flavour, and the other thing that has really worked in my favour in starting this business when I did is it was just at the cusp of an absolute revolution in the UK in terms of chocolate. So when I started making the chocolate, there were one or two people in the UK who were beginning to make chocolate from cocoa beans. And, literally one or two. And, but now, well, Scotland has, 4 or 5 bean-to-bar makers, really excellent bean-to-bar makers. It has 80 or so chocolate makers. It's just, and England, Wales, Northern Ireland, it's just completely exploded. So there are amazing chocolates. There are people who are working with farmers in countries of origin who are, sourcing cocoa ethically. It's a sort of small scale and feeding this small scale industry. There are even people bringing sacks of cocoa over the ocean by sail. It's just it's just fantastic. Everything is amazing. And it's completely changed. It's transformed in the last 10, 15 years in a way that has just been really exciting. So to be sort of on the peripheries of that in my own work, because I'm not making a huge amount. I'm not making chocolate myself from cocoa beans. I do a small amount of that, but I don't have the skills for that. You need to do that full time, really, to learn those skills and to get really good at it and to make the bulk. But there are excellent people in the UK doing that already, and not just the UK. I get chocolate from Vietnam that's been converted into chocolate in Vietnam, from Madagascar. I've just got some amazing chocolate from the Netherlands, which the cocoa beans have come from Indonesia, and from cocoa farms that I actually happened to have visited about 6 or 7 years ago, when I was thinking about trying to access my own cocoa beans. So it's just a really dynamic industry, and lots of people really pushing the boundaries all the time. So just there are amazing things happening in the countries where they're growing cocoa. So it's just very exciting.
So do you think
on the peripheries of it?
Do you think with all this growth, this change, that there's been, it's had an effect on how farmers grow the chocolates, and in a good way?
I think where farmers have access to these sorts of markets, yes, where farmers can access these markets, but there is very, very small percentage. I think it's very easy to get very excited about this, but actually to remember that 95% of cocoa that's grown in the world goes into the big cocoa companies. Well, it's not Cadbury's anymore, is it? But Cargill, Barry Callebaut, Mars, Nestle, they are buying 95% of the cocoa in the world. So this small periphery stuff, in big scheme of things, is maybe not making that much difference. There's not much difference as we would like it to, but it is changing the scene. It's changing the way people are thinking about it, and it's a commodity. It's a really difficult industry to change. So, but 95% of the world's cocoa is grown by smallholders. So, it's all over the world. So, there is potential. So, the craft market, the craft sector is small but incredibly dynamic. And I think we all hope that we're having a bit of an impact on the big five, they call them, the big, big cacao. But we all need to be, as consumers, we all need to be lobbying big cacao to do better. So and keeping an eye on what they do and the promises they make. And they make lots of promises, but we need to be pushing and pushing and pushing all the time to make sure that people are living up to those promises.
And do the big producers, do they tend to push for like kind of monoculture farms, or are they growing?
I don't know so much about. So the big producers Côte d'Ivoire is the biggest producer in the world, and Ghana is the second, and Indonesia is the third. But Indonesia is the only one I know a tiny bit about, in that I have visited a few farms. But actually the statistics in Indonesia are that over 90% of the cocoa that's grown there is grown on small holdings. So no, they're not monocultures. There are big farms. And in fact, I visited one in Java, and he had inherited it. The farmer I visited had inherited his farm from his father, and his father had cleared all the forests. So this cocoa plantation was 25, 30 years old and on its knees, and he realized when he inherited it that there was just, the soil had no quality left. The trees were really unproductive. They weren't healthy. They were always getting a disease, and he sort of went back to basics, looked at the ecology of the species and thought, well, it likes to be under shade, but there's no shade. So he started to grow timber trees to provide shade, and he's improved the soil, and he's improved quite a lot of the stock through grafting, and he's really brought he's changed the ecology of the farm and brought it back from the brink. So I think lots more is understood about what's needed, but cocoa trees definitely are happier with shade. They will grow without it, but they're happier with shade.
That's good. That's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess then it gives people like a kind of almost a double crop, or however many plants they
so
grow crop.
when you look at these Indonesian farms, they do this sort of forest gardening. So you go into their the forest, and they've got pepper vines growing up trees. They've got bananas. They've got cocoa, maybe coffee, maybe rubber. They just have a little bit of absolutely everything, and just not dabble, because they're doing more than that, but they're spreading their risk, and keeping this really complex system going. And these are all really useful cash crops. To earn money, to be able to buy medicine, send their children to school, build houses, whatever. So cash crops are really, really important. And as long as they can grow food crops within that system, then it's a great system.
Yeah.
But sorry, Rox, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I imagine that that if you're growing the cacao in amongst other trees as well, it's going to change the flavour of the chocolate.
Yeah, people say that, but I imagine it's probably got more to do with the health of the soil.
Well, that's what I mean, because then if you've got like this kind of forest and everything's growing interchangeably, the soil will be better, and so terroir of the chocolate.
And you might be able to support a different variety of cocoa, because there are a number of different varieties which have different flavors. But the huge amount of the flavor comes from the fermentation process. So the cocoa beans are fermented so they're in a pod which is about the size of, I don't know, a melon, but it's a bit longer than a melon. And inside there's maybe 40 or 50 of these cocoa beans, which are about the size of an almond. And they've got this white flesh around them, which is really tasty, very sweet, like lychee. And so they're scooped out with this flesh and left to ferment. And that fermentation process is incredibly important in developing the flavour of the cocoa. So, and it can be 5, 6, 7 days long. And then the cocoa beans are dried in the sun to stop the fermentation and to dry them out. And in that process, they go from a purple or a white bean, which is very astringent and really not very tasty, to a brown seed, which is full of all these amazing chemicals that give us all these complex flavors that we associate with chocolate. So the fermentation process is really, really important. And that's been one of the critical developments at the farmer level, in smallholding level, is I think very smallholding farmers find it very difficult to manage that fermentation. They may only pick, 10 or 20 kilos of beans, and that's not quite enough to get a really controlled fermentation going. So the fermentation is a bit random if they do it at all. But now people initially said, well, we've got to train farmers how to do this. And they realized that wasn't really going to work, because farmers never produced enough cocoa to get a good fermentation. So they now have developed the idea of community fermentaries. And so as a farmer, you sell your wet beans, you sell your beans. You don't ferment the beans yourself. You just sell the pods and the wet beans to the fermentary, which could be a co-op run one or a company run one, or, there are different models. And then there's somebody there who bulks it all up, controls the process, is able to get the drying done consistently. And so you've got a really good controlled ferment, and the quality of the cocoa that comes out the other end of that is infinitely superior, and therefore will attract a better price.
Yeah.
So all of these developments have been happening over the last 10, 15 years. A lot of learning at that sort of level as well. And now in some countries, and in particular, I think it's happening quite a lot in the Caribbean, people are going, well, why can't we just make the chocolate ourselves? Why do we have to sell the beans? Why can't we add the value of converting these cocoa beans into chocolate and then sell the chocolate?
Yeah.
And that's happening as well. So all the skills and investment is happening in the country of origin, which is all brilliant. And that's all happening as well. So
it's
sort
quite
of
exciting.
it's quite exciting. It is really exciting. Yeah, it is really exciting. And moving towards a much more equitable supply chain where there is a little bit more knowledge and power, distributed throughout the chain. Whereas the old model is the farmer grows, the government or the buyer sets the price, and it's exported, and it goes into a huge factory, and it's all bulked up, and nobody really cares that much about the quality.
Yeah.
So, and that's what 90% of the cocoa industry is like. And so it's there's a lot happening. It is quite exciting times in some ways, and certainly there is a lot of really positive stuff happening. But it's to say that it's changing the whole sector, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because 90% of what we buy is still from big companies. So.
I suppose though, it's every little bit makes a difference, doesn't it? Because
I think every little bit, and every little bit, it's the same, I think, with all food. And there is a danger that of elitism coming into this, that only the rich can buy organic food, or only the rich can buy this, or and yeah, there is that, and one could say the same. I could say the same about my chocolate. But actually, if we don't buy chocolate, then these cocoa farmers won't have a product to sell, and the intricate economics at the farm level of subsistence farmers, and they are intricate economics. It's a finely balanced system, and if they're not selling cocoa, then hopefully they might be able to sell rubber, or they might be able to sell pepper, or they might be able to sell something else. But the push, and what's happened in Malaysia is that the push has gone to selling palm oil. And so, Malaysia used to be a really big producer of cocoa, and it isn't anymore. It produces very little cocoa. It used to produce fabulous cocoa, very little cocoa. It's now almost all palm oil, because you need less labor to grow palm oil than you do to grow cocoa. So if we don't value the labor in cocoa, we won't have cocoa. But it's complicated, and it's but the better quality chocolate, the closer you can get to this tighter supply chain, by buying more directly sourced cocoa.
So how would...
like it's a push, and I would still always buy something with a fair trade label on it, because I think the fair trade system has a lot going for it in terms of holding some of these bigger companies to account, and they're doing it for us. So I would, there's a couple of couvertures that I buy that are fair trade certified, and I hear a lot of criticism about fair trade, but I do feel that they are holding some of these bigger companies to account, which the craft sector aren't really. The craft sector are just sidestep the whole thing and getting on with their own stuff. Whereas the majority of the cocoa sector is big business.
Yeah.
And the more we can push big business to change, the better, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking about the quality of chocolate. So how would you identify a good quality chocolate?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's the basic way of doing it is reading the label on a bar. So and if they, obviously it's about, there should only be cocoa butter in the chocolate. If there's any other vegetable fat that isn't there, for example, as a flavouring like coconut oil or something, then you shouldn't buy it. It's not chocolate. If it can state the country of origin of the cocoa bean, then so like Ecuador or Peru or Tanzania or India or whatever. So if it can identify the origin of the cocoa bean, that's an indication of, as you know, some sort of quality. If it doesn't have, I mean, you know, whether it's got sugar or milk in it isn't such an indication. I think the cocoa, I tend to find with milk chocolates that I prefer a milk chocolate with maybe 40 to 50% cocoa solids. And that usually means, what it means is that the cocoa is good enough to not need smotherings of sugar and milk to make it palatable. Mm-hmm. So if you've got this astringent, if you've got cocoa that hasn't been particularly well fermented, or it's not particularly tasty, you know, the big cocoa factories, they just use a lot of sugar and milk and vanilla to make it palatable. So if you've got less sugar, less milk, and it's good, tastes good, then it's probably good quality cocoa. So, you know, so you don't need all that stuff to make it taste okay. So, you know, there's those sorts of indications. If you, if they are a craft maker, you'll be paying a lot more for the bar, but you can ask that maker lots of questions. You know, their websites are usually really informative about where they get their cocoa beans from. They'll tell you more about the process that they've gone through, and you know, you can. You know, that's what you're, in a sense, that's what you're paying for. And so you're much closer to the whole system. And whether you like it or not is absolutely and totally personal. So if something is billed as really good quality and you don't like it, that's okay. I don't like, there's a really fancy French chocolate called Varona, which is, you know, the one that quite a lot of chefs use, and it's very good quality. But I don't like it so much as some other chocolates because it's, for my taste, it's just too smooth and too refined. Mm-hmm. And taste is entirely personal. So although it's good quality, I'm happier with somebody else's chocolate. So, you know, and so if you find you don't particularly like a good quality chocolate, yeah, that's okay. These things are all personal. Yeah. But as I've learned, as I've tasted more and more chocolates, I've found I know what I like, and I like particular chocolate makers and the way they approach a cocoa bean, mm-hmm. And it suits me. But you know, there's no right or wrong about this. It's just what suits you.
So tell me about your chocolate then. What makes your chocolate unique?
Well, what makes our chocolate unique is the foraging side of it, is the fact that all our flavours are locally sourced. Not always wild. I use sometimes things from the garden. So black currants, for example. We have a lot of black currants growing in the garden, and I've been using those. But our garden is a bit wild, so I have a lovely patch of water mint in one part of the garden, which I use quite a lot. And the advantage of it is I know where it is. One of the problems of using some plants, like water mint, is if it's growing in a field, in a stream, I'm not quite sure what's in that water, or, you know, what's been eating it or tramping on it. Whereas if it's in my garden, and I know there's no stock wandering around it, then I know it's a little bit nicer to pick, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But we have, I've spent most of the last month or so just every day going out and picking wild strawberries, which are all the way through our garden. And I just pick a handful a day, a small bowl full a day, and dehydrate them, and I'll make them into something. But, you know, you can't go out and pick a bucket of wild strawberries because they just don't work like that. So, but I've been able to, every day I was going out and just picking a small bowl and popping them in the dehydrator So now I've got enough to have a play with, maybe grind into some chocolate or something. So, but, blaeberries, I have to go and find, good blaeberry spots. The same with the raspberries. I was finding good raspberry spots. When I'm picking Scots pine, I have to go and find a pine forest. So most of what I pick is just normally a walk away from the house.
So how do you decide on the wild flavours and the flavour pairings?
That's a good question. I have a sort of two standard, or three maybe standard ways of capturing flavour. So one is in the seasonal chocolates, which is by infusing into cream. So every week we make a batch of chocolates with 4 flavours. So these are the filled ones in a box, the really fancy ganache filled chocolates. And so we do 4 flavours each week. And so I'm making them today. That's my job today, is this week's batch. So I've got some raspberries that I'm just macerating in cream, and then I'll make a ganache with those. And I'm going to make a meadowsweet white chocolate, and I've got a little blaeberry jelly that will go in with that. I've got some wild marjoram, oregano, flowers that I'll probably make into a milk chocolate ganache. And I'm going to have a little go with some bog myrtle to make a ganache as well. But my notes from last year were that I must not over infuse it. I think it goes really, really bitter. So that's what I'm going to do today. So that's infusing in cream, or with fruits, it's a little bit more difficult. They're very wet and you have to manage that. So quite often I make those into a jelly. So I've made a blaeberry jelly, which I can just put into the chocolate, which is a really nice little, so the meadowsweet will be a lovely meadowsweety white ganache, and it's like a sort of rich custard, and then with this little blaeberry jelly in it. So that's quite fun. So those are fresh chocolates. So those have only got a 2-week shelf life. So those we make weekly, and we make them to order. Then the other way I was doing it was to infuse the flavour into cocoa butter, and that works for a small number of flavours. It doesn't actually work for I've struggled with it, and quite a lot of flavours I've tried, and I just haven't liked the results. But I use that for Scots pine, and I use it for elderflower and meadowsweet, and then I can use that cocoa butter to make chocolate. So that's how I make my bars and thins with those. And then I'm slowly expanding a range of chocolates where I grind the flavour into chocolate. So I've got stone grinders, and I've got these. I can just don't know if I can show you behind here. So this is, can you see that? This is one of them, and it's just a small tabletop grinder. And I've got it off at the moment because it makes a terrible noise. I'm just to see if I can show you inside. It's full of chocolate, green chocolate, because I'm trying to make a thick spruce chocolate. And I know I'll take that. It's better. And it's not really very good, is it? I don't know what I'm doing. That is that in the bowl. So you've got 2 wheels on a spindle. And when it goes round, you can just see, there's 2 stone wheels and a stone base, and it just grinds down. So that's how you make chocolate. So these are for making chocolate in. And so you grind the cocoa beans, which are full of fat, into a paste, and you just keep grinding until the particle sizes are about 20-25 microns. And at that point, you don't really feel them, and they're completely coated in cocoa butter. So that's how you make chocolate out of cocoa beans. So I'm taking it sort of one step further by incorporating the wild flavour. So, sorry, this is falling to pieces, falling off. The wild flavour, so in this one it's spruce tips. So I've dried the spruce tips and made them into a powder, and I'm grinding that into the white chocolate. And so the spruce tip particles will be 12 to 25 microns, completely coated in cocoa butter, and be absolutely part of the chocolate. You won't feel them. It's not going to be gritty. They'll just be part of the chocolate itself. And that's been really fun. It doesn't work again for everything, but I've made some gorgeous fruit chocolates and mushroom chocolates, seaweed chocolates that have used that principle. And then, so what I'm doing then is I match the flavour with somebody else's chocolate. So I've got I've got a collection of amazing couvertures from different chocolate makers. And whenever I have a flavour, I think, okay, this is quite fruity. I know this chocolate here from Madagascar is really fruity, and this one from Panama is deliciously red fruity. I wonder if these would work. And so I nibble a bit with the flavour and make a decision as to which one I'm going with. Sometimes it surprises you and it doesn't work, but normally that's it. It's a good way of making that pairing. So that's what we do. And I've been making leathers, which are amazing. I'm sure you make fruit leathers. I just think they're incredible. I just love them. And they're brilliant with chocolate because we just cut them into strips and dip them in match them again with the chocolate. So yesterday we'd made raspberry leather from wild raspberries, and then I was dipping it into a Venezuelan plain chocolate.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, delicious. So we will have those sorts of things at the festival on our stall for sale. I made a nettle leather earlier in the year, which was weird. I'm not entirely sure. I put a bit of mint in because I thought that might lighten the flavour a bit. But we matched that with a very dark chocolate, and it's quite an interesting result. But so it's always just a process of experimentation, really.
That's nice.
I'm of a mind that there will be chocolate. Sorry?
Tasty experimentation.
Tasty. Sometimes tasty, sometimes not so tasty.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us on to the Wild Food Festival. So as I said, you're going to be at the Wild Food Festival in September.
Yes.
Maybe you could just talk to us about your stall that you're going to be doing and the workshops that you're going to be offering. Yeah.
So the stall, I will have my normal chocolate. So whatever I've got, the seasonal chocolates in September, whatever they will be, and my normal stock of bars and thins, and then the wild chocolates and leathers that I will have at that stage. These are all made in really small batches, so they're only ever made at about 40 bars at a time. So, and they do tend to vary a bit through the year as well. So that's a bit, what do they call it? Micro batch. So you have to come along and see what we've got, really. I can't necessarily predict. So we'll be doing that. And on the Saturday, we're going to have a wild flavour pairing challenge. So I will, at the stall, basically. So I will have a collection of delicious chocolates, white milk and dark chocolates. And the idea is that people, if they've been on walks or they have a wild food that they want to see if they can pair it with chocolate, to bring them along and bring their wild flavour and have a nibble of these different chocolates and see which one they think works with it. And that's just a little fun, really. But just that process of trying to explore flavour in chocolate as well as the flavour, the wild flavour, which is what we do. And then on the Sunday, we'll do a chocolate making workshop. So ideally, it would be great if people could bring flavours and we could try and work out ways of incorporating those into chocolate. But actually, we just don't have time to do that. The chocolate making process requires more time than than we have. But I will make ganaches. We will roll them and dip them in chocolate, and we can decorate them and add people's wild flavours to them if they want them. And then people will take home their chocolate. So hopefully they'll get a bit of a sense of what it takes to make a chocolate, and have some fun, and take home some delicious chocolate. So that's what we'll be doing.
I did one of your workshops before, and I really, really enjoyed it. I've been thinking I want to do it again. I wish I could come to the festival workshops, all of them, but
I know. Yeah, you and I the same. I mean, I wish I could just participate in the festival, and but as a punter, that would be great fun. But there we go. Another year. This year, I will be tied to my stall. So, but it's great. And when we did the one before, way back, when was it? 2 years ago, wasn't it? I just absolutely loved it because everybody was so interested in the flavors, and it was just such a lovely experience. Quite often I'm at food festivals and I'm having to explain all about the wild stuff. But at the Wild Food Festival, it wasn't that. It was just that, we got over that particular hurdle. We were just into exploring, potential of different flavors, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. So
yes, looking forward to it. So can you just tell people how they can get hold of your chocolates and just how they can connect with you?
Yeah, so I have a website, which is charlotteflowerchocolates.com, and you can we have an online shop which is accessed through that website, so you can buy our chocolates through that. We sell through the post, and I have social media on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And you can sign up to one of our newsletters. The details of that are all on the website. And links to all of that are on the website.
That's great. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh no, thank you for talking to me, and looking forward to seeing you at the festival.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Charlotte Flowers Chocolates. So just a little bit more about the Scottish Wild Food Festival. It's happening on the 18th and the 19th of September 2021 at Tirnanog, near Drimmen, near Loch Lomond, just about 45 minutes outside of Glasgow. There's going to be a variety of workshops, from chocolate making to storytelling, to wild food walks, wild mushroom walks, preserving, fermenting, tea blending, tea tasting, wild drinks, wild cocktails, all sorts of things. So it's going to be a really, really good day. Tickets are on sale now. If you go to www.scottishwildfoodfestival.co.uk. So it's www.scottishwildfoodfestival.co.uk, and the tickets are on sale for the 18th and the 19th of September. So you can book tickets for the festival, which will get you into all the free workshops and the talks that are happening, but there's also additional charges, and you can book as well for the various different workshops that are happening. So check out the website and hope to see you there. And as always, if you're enjoying these podcasts, please like and share and subscribe and follow me and listen to the future podcasts. We're going to be talking to other people from the Wild Food Festival as we run up to the festival itself. You can check out me and my stuff. My website is www.roxmadeira.com, and I'll be at the festival doing a tea blending workshop.